Hi guys, how you doing?
Hey, Sophia.
Hey.
Doing good.
So we can really take this conversation wherever we want to go. So please feel free to do that. But first, for those in the audience that don't know who you guys are, let's just go around briefly and just give some brief introductions.
I'll start. My name is Will Connect, and I am the chairman of a metals manufacturer in Pennsylvania that has dabbled in the metaverse, really excitingly expanding our brand into the future. And excited to be with y'all, and honored to be part of this panel.
And I'll go next. Hey, everybody. Jake Steinerman, I'm the head of community at Spatial.io. We're a platform that allows anyone to create their space in the metaverse for free, and really building a metaverse for culture around events, concerts, get-togethers, and art.
Hey, I'm Tony Parisi, Chief Strategy Officer at Lamina One, a new blockchain intended to tease beyond simple media, full-on virtual worlds, decentralized system services to make that happen, all bringing Web3 and the immersive internet together. I've been working in that space for over 25 years, and I still like doing that. And here I am.
Love it. And that, yeah, love it. And that's a conversation that I keep urging our industry to have is with the, the spatial community and the Web3 community, kind of bringing that all together, because a lot of that is happening in very siloed spaces. And so we definitely need to continue to have those discussions to be able to create opportunities for virtual commerce, quite frankly. So each of you has had some really interesting stories of how you've been involved with exploring opportunities in progressing virtual commerce. Can you guys each tell us about what each of you guys have done towards these efforts?
Yeah, I'll start on that one. Before I joined Lamina One, I took about 3 weeks off. My whole plan was to take the rest of the year off, but I ended up taking a job at a company founded by Neil Stephenson. If you know who that is, you understand why I couldn't refuse the opportunity. He coined the term metaverse. I'll leave it at that. Look him up if you don't know who he is. Anyway, before that, I was working at Unity Technologies for almost 6 years. And you may be familiar with the company, foremost content creation and game creation, 3D engine, set of authoring tools and engine for deploying rich content. And for the four and a half of those last 6 years, I was driving advertising and e-commerce solutions using Unity's platform and our global advertising network, which reaches a few billion people worldwide in mobile phones with ads that are presented to gamers who play free-to-play games. So I started researching what it would take to bring augmented reality and 3D into those kind of advertising situations. And that kind of led me into 3D for e-commerce. So I spent a lot of time looking at the convergence of physical retail and how to create digital twins of products to help sell them on websites, but in 3D, and to sell them in, interactive applications. And I also started looking at the convergence between all forms of physical and digital. So I was mostly focused on digital twins, but there's really a big overlap between that and what you can do in augmented reality, where you're trying products out in a space before you buy them. But potentially the content around that isn't simply just a product visualization. It's, potentially an interactive ad unit and things like that. So commerce itself becomes a little more plastic, and the experiences for digital commerce can change greatly beyond, again, just a very similar representation of a product. This could be a whole new digital experience.
Yeah, definitely. I've had similar story in terms of kind of that product, how brands and stuff use AR for their products and things like that. So I started actually not in a place I ever thought I would, especially where I'm at today, working for a large manufacturing company and figuring out how they can use augmented and virtual reality to really sell their products to their customers, their raw materials company. How do you basically show how the benefits of their products in ways that you couldn't through traditional video or paper marketing, which they had been using up until that point. And that led me to working for PTC Vuforia, who is one of the augmented reality platforms out there that allows brands and enterprise companies to build AR experiences really easily, either for training and simulation, or also worked with a lot of brands like Porsche, BMW, and others to build immersive, engaging marketing experiences using augmented reality. Like put your car in your driveway and design it before you actually go and buy it, those kinds of things. And that then led me to Spatial, where I'm at today, because Spatial originally was a platform that allowed companies to have your virtual office and virtual headquarters and allow people to come together to feel as if you're in the same place to design products or design stores before they would actually go and get built. You can walk around a virtual version of the store in your living room, or actually go to the store itself and lay things out in the physical store and see how that looked, while bringing in avatars of your colleagues, even if they're across the world. But that very quickly kind of changed as we interestingly brought on artists to that platform who started putting up art into these virtual spaces and boardroom templates. And that coincided with the whole advent of everyone, what had been AR, VR, XR is now everyone's calling it the metaverse. That when that came out, then you had brands coming and looking for, hey, I want to have my own metaverse experience. So where previously we had been working at Spatial with brands for as an internal productivity tool, now we're working with them to create external facing marketing experiences. So companies and brands like McDonald's and the NBA can have engaging brand experiences. We're not necessarily going to a virtual McDonald's and buying a virtual Big Mac, but creating engaging cultural experiences that have kind of subtle nods to that larger brand.
Good gracious. Jake and Tony are really interesting. Sophia, I hope I don't disappoint the crowd. I'm an old school manufacturer. I've been in manufacturing for 30 plus years. And we are in the gift space. We make gifts, collectibles, artwork in both B2C and B2B. You might even hear some of the anvils in the background. I'm at the factory right now in north of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Wendell August, we make it by hand. And about a year ago, I was hanging out with my 22-year-old son, and he called me over to his phone, and he was so excited to reveal the NFTs he had just purchased through NBA Top Shot. And opened one to the next, to the next, to the next. And I'm going, what in the world are we doing here? He said, Dad, these are NFTs. And so that was my introduction to what an NFT even was. I had to ask him to spell it for me. And as he shared that with me, I was absolutely enthralled. I was a baseball card kid, and I had baseball cards, and I'd trade them. And I saw this next generation of the baseball card being done so well by the NBA. And I started to be interested to see what can a manufacturer, and Sophia, we've been around for almost 100 years. Literally next year is our 100th anniversary. What could we do that would transpose the business world in that we live in and take a part of our business, a division of our business, and begin to embrace this future that people much younger than I are living in every single day? And I began to study and try to figure it all out. I went to a metaverse conference in Puerto Rico in December, and it all clicked. I saw these young artists, young photographers presenting on stage and talking about the amazing success of their art and how collectors have now embraced their artwork, which used to be a framed piece that would go on a wall. And now they were buying NFTs and displaying and holding them in the metaverse. And it was like a lightning bulb went off in my head. Light went off in my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, we've been doing this for almost 100 years, just physically. We're going to try it digitally. So a few months back, we did a very small test run. We dropped our first NFT, which was 3-dimensional, which is from I've heard project. We're holding it off to the major drop portions, and just really excited to, as an old line manufacturer and a guy who doesn't understand and has not been native in this world forever, how do we bring the metaverse to regular folks like me? And how do we make it frictionless to move from a physical to a digital world? And And that's the journey that Wendell August Forge has been in on, and it's been a thrilling ride over this past about 9 months.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the combination of where you're coming from, Will, with a more traditional like metal forging background. And then, Jake and Tony have really been spearheading, the digital virtual side of this. And what I like, again, most about what you're doing, Will, is that it's not just NFTs. Like you said, they're 3D. And you've been placing them in 3D spaces and kind of showing the value of owning virtual assets. So let's touch a little bit on that. Maybe Jake and Tony, you can come in with some of your viewpoints on like what is the value, what will be the value of or the value prop of owning a 3D virtual asset.
Yeah, I can start on that, Tony. So I mean, what we've been seeing and what you see happen a lot these days, right? And I think it was started to happen a lot, obviously, over the course of COVID, is people spending more and more time online and in virtual spaces, whether it's games like Fortnite or Roblox or Decentraland, other platforms and things like that. People are spending a lot more time in there, and thereby they put a lot more value on the things that they identify with or represent themselves with in these virtual spaces. So whether it's the clothes they put on their avatar and they go around different spaces, hang out with friends or play different games, or whether it's the space that they actually spend time in, their virtual house or what have you. Just like, in your own home, you put up artwork on the wall, or you have like a really nice car, your car you have in the driveway, with different ways that you express your identity. Now people are doing that in these virtual spaces. But in order to do that, right, like there's always the feedback of, I can just like copy paste, an NFT. Like, what's the difference if I can just copy paste it? It's the idea, right, that that say an artist. So we worked with this amazing sculptor, Federico Clapis from Italy. And what he does is he takes his physical sculptures, scans them, brings them into the digital space, and makes those NFTs. And similar to kind of what you're talking about, when you buy the NFT, you'll get the physical thing as well. But now I can take that NFT and put it in my virtual home where I'm hanging out with my friends. We're watching movies together. We're chatting. We're whatever we would do in the physical world, we can do it in that virtual space. But now I can bring it into that virtual space, and since it's backed, that purchase and that ownership is verified on the blockchain by that artist, that thereby has more value. And that artist is also able to create scarcity from it as well. So even if someone copies and pastes that NFT, it's like buying, if you go to a museum, you can buy a photo of the Mona Lisa, but obviously it's not the real one. If it is your Nicolas Cage or something like that. But it gives it that verified authenticity, which digital artists haven't been able to do really ever until really the advent of blockchain technology and NFTs. I think that's what's most interesting about it.
So I'll pick up on that. Well said, Jake. There's, no doubt that we're living more and more of our lives digitally, as you started talking about, Jake, though I don't think any of us believe or hope that we're going to live it entirely digitally. It's nice to get out and touch grass, as the kids say, live in the physical world. But we do spend a lot of our times communicating digitally, and more we start to value more and more of the things we create, collect, consume that are digital. And now we have infrastructure for defining the rights around that, for delivering that kind of content to anybody, anywhere in the world. And this gives us an opportunity to now assign value to that stuff. I mean, everything we're talking about here is what do people value? And when you think about it, there's few commodities that are in short supply, or time, or attention, the amount of time we live digitally. And so now if we have an infrastructure for assigning value to that, some of those impulses that we've always had and we've expressed through physical media can now be expressed digitally. Creating a piece of art, collecting a piece of art, sharing some experience with someone. More and more these digital tools are allowing us to do that in a way that uses fewer atoms, just the electron parts of atoms. And that's just wondrous. That's really cool. It's not going to replace any of this, but it clearly has its place where these are going to become more and more valuable to all of us collectively even if they're purely digital.
So why is creating seamless paths for commerce important for getting brands onboarded to spatial mediums? And maybe, Will, we can start with some of the things that you've experienced, good, bad, or indifferent, like with this project that you just went through. What were your experiences for this, I guess, the path to actually convert and sell some of these assets? And then going back to Tony and Jake, why is it important to create these seamless paths for commerce to get these brands onboarded? Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, if you want me to start, yeah, I'd love to. First thing, I'll just give a background. Our average customer is female, 45 to 60. So the first thing is, as we started our project, we understood, and we used me as the avatar, that the first thing we had to do was we had to educate. We had to explain, we had to communicate what the metaverse even was. Although many of us on this, during this time on this live stream, we're doing it every day, 99% of the world not. And so for us, the first part of the project was an understanding that we had to begin to educate a group of folks who were not native in the digital world. And so we did a lot of videos, we did a lot of training, we did the AMAs, where we just opened up to our community. We've got 100,000 plus customers on our database, and hey, join us, join this new revolution, and learn together with us. And so education has been a significant part of our process. And again, we're a tiny little company, but we really believe that we play an important role in a small world of bridging this gap between a lack of understanding to, at least, as Tony suggested, and Jake said as well, where a portion of the world will be moving. Whether or not I adopt it or not, it doesn't matter. The world is moving here. And so that's been an exciting journey. It's been a great journey for me. I had to surround myself with a lot of really smart people in the space to get my head around it. And one of the tests we did was sort of the idiot test. Hey, if Will can understand this, anybody can. And so that was part of our training, just, helping people understand where we are moving, at least a part of our world, and, bringing the term phygital into the Wendell August repertoire. I remember when I first introduced the concept to my colleagues here, again, a 99-year-old manufacturer, literally, are you crazy? What? We're doing what? And again, it's those of us that are willing to take that first step. I think of Harrison Ford in one of the Raiders movies where he takes the first step off the cliff and each step begins to show. And that's where we are today. We're taking that step off the cliff and we're inviting people to join the journey. So long answer, sorry, Sophia, but again, much of our journey has been education and training and helping folks bridge this gap that is out there today.
Yeah, and I think to that point also, in terms of how brands are getting into these experiences, it's about, when it comes to specifically like the metaverse as an example, it's about meeting people and brands where they are. I think there's also this called a misconception that the NFTs and the metaverse are like inherently interlinked. Like you have to set up a MetaMask and know what NFTs are just to like start, say, an XR metaverse experience. Where I think what we've discovered, and this actually we're lucky enough, we're coming from an enterprise background, forced us into an area or into a direction where we had to build a platform that was super accessible and super easy for everybody. That now that we've kind of pivoted away from being strictly an enterprise platform, we've kind of figured out that, hey, if you want to get the masses, you really want to get everyone, including, say, mom and pop shops, into these experiences, you have to meet them where they are. So that means not having this kind of obscure requirement for virtual land or virtual real estate. Like there's certain areas where scarcity makes sense, and I think that's one area where it doesn't. But also giving people the onboard ramps, a diverse set of onboard ramps. So if you want to, sign up with a Google account or an Apple or a Microsoft account, like you can do that. And then as you become more kind of Web3 native and familiar, you can start to add in kind of those Web3 logins, like log in with a MetaMask account, all those kinds of things. So and then being accessible on all kinds of devices. Like there's is also this conception that you have to have like the experience, it has to be done in a headset. And I think you can have it in a headset, and I think the best experience is in a headset, but you're not going to reach the full potential of your audience if you try and build an experience explicitly on, say, a virtual reality headset. Most people today, most of our users are in a web browser. Most of the time I'm using these virtual spaces, I'm using it in a web browser, and I have a VR headset sitting right next to me all the time. That's just the nature of the industry today. It's just much easier to access these spaces in web browsers and on your phones, right? People today live in their mobile phones and their browsers. Headsets will get there. I think they're progressively getting better every single year. But we're not at the point where everyone's wearing glasses, right? That's still, I think Meta even said that's 10 years away. When I hear that's 10 years away, I hear 20 years if they put it on that horizon. So I think it's all about meeting people where they are. So as brands build these commerce experiences, know that like you don't have to build something that's 10 years out. You can build experiences really easily today using platforms and methods that everyone's already using today.
It's a great point,
on Jake's point. Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I mean, to Jake's point, I love, and I can't wait to connect with these two geniuses after this session. But we decided to cards. We did a MetaMask description and tried to explain it to folks, and their heads exploded. Yeah, and so we accepted credit cards as a payment, of choice to meet people exactly where they are, as Jake just said.
Yep. And yeah, absolutely. And on all of those points, it's very important for brands to be where their audience is and be very thoughtful about that strategy. It's not about doing everything, and everything. Everything isn't always everything to everybody. It doesn't need to be everything to everybody. Sometimes it is about the little wins, of trying something new and seeing what works. So for brands that are looking to find ways to incorporate some sort of virtual commerce, like what are your recommendations of where they should start and how they can assess the potential avenues for doing that?
Where do we start here? I mean, I love what we were talking about making this more accessible. So a big part of this is demystification. And Will, you're doing God's work there, I'd say. Like, it's so many folks in where you're at, where you're actually making physical stuff and you want to bring it online in this way, don't even know where to start. So for every Wendell August, there are thousands of manufacturers and brands who don't even know where to begin, right? So you've done some of that hard work already, but I think there does need to be more education, especially for brands, demystifying that this doesn't have to be in a VR headset, like Jake said. This doesn't need to be a game development production budget. There are actually pretty simple and accessible tools. There are scanning solutions for getting your content if it's physical objects already and you don't have the CAD models. There are ways to convert models if you do have the model data of your products. Telling the story and advertising and getting the reach doesn't have to be a $500,000 campaign. It could be a few tens of thousands of dollars to run a simple ad campaign to figure this out. And we've got a couple of things at odds here. I think we've got folks like Spatial, or what I'm doing in my new company and basically been doing my whole career, who've been trying to make this as low end and accessible as possible to everyone along creation and consumption. And then there's other folks who want to keep this all mysterious, or they want to sell you a big iron and the marketing department's telling you everything has to be like a 1,000,000 polygon model of that little trinket or statue, or whatever it is you make, Will. And it just doesn't have to be that way to create a compelling experience. People care more about spinning it around and seeing what it can do interactively than they may care about the fidelity of that. Now, maybe if they want to see the leather seats on a car, it might be a slightly different situation in terms of fidelity, right? And you want to walk up to that seat and almost smell the leather. But in general, I think folks make a big deal about the craftsmanship and the fidelity and all this stuff, and it is much to the disservice. We are at a place now where it is affordable to create the content. Game engines like Unity, but authoring tools, e-commerce solutions like companies like Ventana. There's lots of things out there that are starting to show the value of this, and it does not have to be a really expensive proposition. So I think it starts there. So it's right along these same lines. Let's demystify it. Let's bring it into the place where it's accessible for everybody.
Yeah, and I think to that point also, it's you don't even have like, there are a lot of great tools out there for creating content if you don't have any content. But I think the other thing that I've learned also is you can use content that you already have and integrate it into these experiences. So like when I was trying to demystify all this at my first job really out of college, which was at Dow Chemical, actually, Will, out in Michigan. I mean, I got told there we're not Google and things like that back in 2013. So obviously it's a very different world now. But what helped me get buy-in internally there was not trying to say, hey, we need to build this incredible HoloLens experience, which is what I started to do. I kind of went down that wrong road, but learned that like, hey, if I can find some existing content, an existing CAD model, an existing video, and integrate that into a mobile-based AR experience, I created that. I found a 3D model of a water filtration system that Dow makes. And then I found some video, which happened to be like a 20-year-old video. And just did a very basic experience where I took one of the product marketing catalogs for that water filter and created an image target based AR experience. So you point your phone at the cover of this brochure, recognizes the image, and then displays the 3D model of that filter, and a video kind of pops up next to it. Recorded that, posted it in the internal, I think it was Yammer at the time we were using, to be like, this is what's possible with augmented reality from a marketing experience, and then just kind of open the question of what can we do with this. I did obviously a massive company with hundreds of business units, and posed the question, what can we do with this? And got tons of responses from people being like, oh, we can create a product physics simulation. We can do this. So there was all these ideas that started popping out once people kind of saw the art of the possible. So you can talk about it all day, but once you show people what's possible while grounding it in something that's familiar, I think that opens people's eyes up. And you can also, like I said, use existing content. You don't have to go and create a 3D model to create this. Take an existing video you have and throw it into a platform like Unity or Spatial or whatever to create an experience. And really, you can start there. And I think that's where you start to get buy-in. And then you can level up and start to do 3D models and scans and et cetera, et cetera.
I think that whole demystification thing is so critical. And I love Kevin's comments in the chat where a 10-year-old with an iPhone 12 and stuff. So many people think that, this is untouchable. It's rocket science. And I'm not a rocket scientist, so I can't even engage in this. But what you guys are doing in your companies and what we're trying to do is, we're a tiny little company. We're a manufacturer, literally ball peen hammers and 50 yards from me right now. We're like as backwards as it gets. Handmade in America. Are you kidding me? But yeah, we've done it. It's not rocket science. And I really, for those who are out there, like, the other brands that are a little bit intimidated by this, dip the toe because the water's warm. It's not ice cold, and this is not something that's impossible. Our kids are doing it every day. And again, brands, we need to get a hold of this. I remember when my first book buying experience on Amazon was absolutely the most incredible thing I've ever done in my life. And it was so basic, looking back 20 years now. And that's in 20 years what folks are going to say about this time in history as it relates to the metaverse and everything that's happening. So this isn't rocket science. And I love what you guys are doing and the word, Tony, you keep using is demystify. That's the best word I've heard to explain what we're all trying to do right now, so that the 99.9% who don't get it aren't so intimidated. They just turn their back or throw their hands up and say, I'm done.
Yeah. So what needs to happen from, either a technical perspective, an awareness perspective, adoption perspective, investment perspective, collaboration perspective, to get us to a place where the vision of virtual commerce can reach its maximum potential?
I'm going to start this one off on the technology side. We can check one box off at least, which is we're close enough to having kind of universal content formats for the 3D. And I'm going to toot my own horn here as one of the designers of GLTF, one of the common model formats that's being used by everybody now in NFTs, on e-commerce websites, in social media applications from Meta, TikTok, and Snap. It is the content format everyone's creating to. It wasn't intended for NFTs. NFTs didn't exist when we designed it a decade ago. It was intended to liberate 3D content in web browsers and on mobile applications for the time. But this is, a wonderful outgrowth of that effort, which was let's create a 3D file format everyone can agree on, deliver it over the wire to do whatever. And the whatever was somewhat open-ended. Obviously, you need to validate that against use cases that make sense. And here we have another set of use cases now with virtual commerce, with 3D NFTs. That effort will expand to include more and more types of interaction and interactive content with all of these standards initiatives happening. The Metaverse Standards Forum, please look that up if you don't know about it. The Open Metaverse Initiative, OMI, Interoperability Group. Sophia, you're familiar with all of these, obviously, and I'm sure you are, Jake, at Spatial. The industry is coming together saying we really can't have any one company or small group of companies control this, control the format, control the distribution, control the creation with tools. This needs to be basically a global village of everyone getting together to provide enough technology so folks like Will can do this without having to contemplate doing it with a massive budget or with, experts that he's not going to be able to find and hire. So it starts there, interoperability in the technology.
Yeah, I want to expand on that too, because that's like really important to us. I think from the technology side, we're getting there. We have, we're getting into from accessibility side, right? These things are starting to work on accessible devices. You have even headsets that are becoming accessible to the masses. The Quest, right? It's like $300-400. Like that's the price of an Xbox. Like those kinds of things. Like we're getting there, and they'll continue to get better. But yeah, I definitely want to reiterate the kind of the standards aspect, because we always say at Spatial, and we say this always very publicly, we're not trying to build the metaverse. That's like, it's like we're trying to build the internet. Like that's just not feasible. We want people to come to Spatial, have a great cultural experience. They go to a concert, they go to an art show, something like that, and then go to another platform like Decentraland, or go to Fortnite and play a game or a concert, or go to Decentraland and have another experience. Like we very openly work together. We just did Decentraland Art Week, or did a Metaverse Art Week with Decentraland a couple of weeks ago. But we need better standards for that to become easier for people. I think a lot of that actually comes down to almost like the avatar level. To me, the avatar is almost like going to be like the web browser of the metaverse. Like that's the thing that you use to get everywhere. And there's very few platforms, or very few platforms or companies that are doing this well. I mean, Ready Player Me is I think one of the ones that are doing it best. They may be kind of on their own in terms of what they're doing and the types of platforms that they work with, like hundreds or thousands already today. But we're going to need that level of integration, basically, and interoperability across more platforms. So you don't have to go and download a new application and open up a new app in your browser just to open a new experience. So I think we're like Tony said, we're starting to see this. I think with the big companies, Microsoft, Google, et cetera, Meta, are starting to form these kinds of groups. But I think even at a lower level, we definitely need different standards for that interoperability.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. We have Richard Ward up next to talk about his lovely Richards per minute epitome of engaging your customers, and we've coined that Richards per minute, and you'll see why here shortly. So thank you guys. Have a good rest of your day, and I hope you enjoy the summit.